Next we study about the crystal voids. In some earlier sections, we have come across the atomic packing factor or APF, which is the fractional volume of the unit cell, which is actually occupied by the atoms. Now, since the atoms are approximated to spheres, there will always be some empty spaces inside the crystal structures which cannot be occupied by the spherical atoms. These empty spaces in crystal structures are called crystal voids. Now, depending upon the shape, the crystal voids are classified into two types. The first is the tetrahedral voids and the second one is the octahedral voids. In the first one, in case of tetrahedral voids, we see in this figure there are three spherical atoms at the bottom plane and one spherical atom at the top plane, and the empty space in between these two planes form the tetrahedral void. Here in this figure we see the example of a tetrahedral void in between the spherical atoms. Now, in case of tetrahedral voids, an atom of maximum radius 0.225 r can be accommodated, where capital R denotes the radius of the atoms. Next we come to the octahedral voids. Here in this figure we can see that in case of octahedral voids there are three spherical atoms at the bottom plane and another three spherical atoms at the top plane, and the empty space that we get in between these two planes form the octahedral void. Here in this figure we can see the example of an octahedral void in between the spherical atoms. In case of octahedral voids, an atom of maximum radius 0.414 r can be accommodated, where capital R denotes the radius of the atoms. So, this is all about the crystal voids and their classifications. Next we study about the crystal defects. In nature, it is always difficult to find perfect crystals, or in other words, there will always be imperfections or crystal defects. Now, depending upon the dimensions, crystal defects are broadly classified into four categories: point defects, line defects, surface defects, and volume defects. The first one, the point defects, are the zero dimension defects, which represent the defects related to position, presence, or absence of any atom. Examples are the vacancies, interstitial and substitutional impurities, Schottky and Frankel defects, etc. Secondly, the line defects are the one-dimensional defects, which represents the defects related to the linear arrangement of atoms. Examples are the dislocations, which can be edge or screw. The third one is the surface defects, which are two-dimensional defects and which represents the defects on the surface of atomic arrangements, where the examples are external surfaces, grain boundaries, phase boundaries, stacking faults, etc. And the last one is the volume defects, which are the three-dimensional defects and which represent the defects related to the volume of materials. Examples are the cracks, porosities, inclusions, and other phases. So, in the coming sections, we will learn about these different types of crystal defects in detail. Let us now study about the point defects. Point defects are the zero-dimension defects because they represent the defects which are related to the position, presence, or absence of an atom. Let us now explain different examples of point defects. Here in this figure, we can see that the parent atoms are represented blue in color. Now, when a parent atom from a particular lattice site is missing, it forms a particular point defect called vacancy. Again, when a parent atom of a particular lattice site occupies an interstitial position, it forms a self-interstitial, which is the example of another point defect. Now, apart from these parent atoms, there can be other impurity atoms which may be incorporated inside the parent atoms and which are represented in different colors in this figure. Here we can see that the impurity atom may substitute a parent atom, and then it is called a substitutional impurity. And when the impurity atom occupies the position of an interstitial in between the parent atoms, it is called an interstitial impurity. So, a substitutional impurity atom substitutes a parent atom, and an interstitial impurity atom occupies the interstitial position. Another 2 point defects we can say about Schottky defect and Frankel defect. Firstly, in case of Schottky defect, an atom of a particular lattice site can be moved into the external surface of the crystal. So, it leaves behind only one point defect, which is a vacancy. In case of Frankel defect, an atom of a particular lattice site is moved into another interstitial position. So, it gives rise 2 point defects. One is the vacancy and one is the interstitial. Thus, the Schottky defect is related to only one point defect, that is vacancy, and the Frankel defect gives rise to 2 point defects, which are the vacancy and the interstitial. So, these are the different examples of point defects. We have already learned in the earlier section that impurity atoms may be either substitutional or interstitial impurity. For the substitutional type, solute or impurity atoms replace or substitute for the host atoms. Now there are several features of the solute and solvent atoms that actually determine the degree to which the former will dissolve in the latter. These favorable conditions for solid solubility are: firstly, the atomic size factor. Now appreciable quantities of a solute may be accommodated in this type of solid solution only when the difference in atomic radius between the two atom types is less than about 15%. Otherwise, the solute atoms will create substitutional lattice distortions and a new phase will form. The second one is the crystal structure. Now for appreciable solid solubility, the crystal structure for metals of both atomic types must be the same. The third one is the electronegativity. The more electropositive one element and the more electronegative the other, the greater is the chance that they will form an intermetallic compound instead of a substitutional solid solution. The last condition is the valencies. Other factors being equal, a metal will have more of a tendency to dissolve another metal of higher valency than one of a lower valency. So these may be considered as the desirable conditions or the favorable conditions for solid solubility. Next we study about the line defects. Line defects are also called as dislocations. It is a linear arrangement of atoms along which there is some imperfections in the bonding of the atoms. Most substances deform by the gliding of atomic planes. The plane and direction depend on the type of crystal structure. Calculations on the force required to cause such movements give results far above the experimentally determined values. In early 1930s, Taylor developed a hypothesis of an extra half plane of atoms. We can see in this figure the extra half plane of atoms inserted between two parallel planes of a normal crystal. Now slip would take place by movement of this extra half plane to the left or to the right with much lesser force than would normally be necessary. He called this imperfection as edge dislocation. Now, in such edge dislocation, slip takes place along a plane perpendicular to the dislocation itself, and the slip plane and slip direction remain in those of the particular lattice type involved. Here in this figure, we can see that there is an extra half plane which is an incomplete atomic plane inserted in between the two complete atomic planes of a crystal structure. Now due to the external force, which is the shear stress, this extra half plane is moving from left towards right in this case. So here we can see in this figure the extra half plane has moved from left towards right, and finally it has occupied the rightmost position. So consequently, due to the shear stress, the upper part of the material has been sheared with respect to the lower part because of the movement of this extra half plane from left towards right, or in other words, the slip has occurred. Now the plane across which the slip is occurring is called the slip plane. The direction of slip is called the slip direction, which is from left towards right in this case. The edge dislocation or the extra half plane is represented by this symbol as shown in this figure. So due to the presence of this extra half plane, the material has been sheared under the effect of a much lesser force. So this is the consequence of the presence of this extra half plane or the edge dislocation. So in this figure, it is clear that in case of edge dislocation, the slip plane and the slip directions are perpendicular to the dislocation or the extra half plane. Next, we talk about the screw dislocations, which is represented in this figure. For screw dislocations, the glide direction is parallel to the dislocation in contrast to the perpendicular direction of the edge type. So in case of screw dislocation, the slip direction is parallel to the dislocation itself, which is unlike to the edge dislocation where the slip plane and slip direction are perpendicular to the dislocation or the extra half plane. So these edge dislocation and screw dislocations are two types of dislocations or line defects. Here in this figure, we can see once again the edge and the screw dislocation. As studied in the earlier section, in case of edge dislocation, the slip direction is perpendicular to the dislocation or the extra half plane, while in case of screw dislocation, the slip direction is parallel to the dislocation. Now we introduce two more parameters called the dislocation loop and the Burgers vector, which are demonstrated in this particular figure. When a crystal contains both edge and screw dislocations, a well-defined area of slip results often in the form of a regular figure, which is a curved line called a dislocation loop. Here we can see the area of slip and the curved line called the dislocation loop. A dislocation line is a closed curve with a constant Burgers vector. Here the Burgers vector with a definite direction is denoted by small b in this figure. The dislocation line has a Burgers vector parallel to the line at points 2 and 4 and perpendicular to the line at points 1 and 3. So the dislocation is purely screw at points 2 and 4 and purely edge at points 1 and 3. At other points over the dislocation loop, it is a mixed mode of dislocation, that is partly edge and partly screw. Lastly, we introduce two more parameters related to edge and screw dislocation, that is the dislocation climb and cross slip. In dislocation climb, an edge dislocation moves in the direction of the extra half plane of atoms, and in case of cross slip, a screw dislocation moves into another slip plane having a slip direction common to the original one. So these are the few important facts related to edge and screw dislocations. After the line defects, we study about the surface defects. One of the most important examples of surface defects is the grain boundaries. So, to start with, let us first study about how the grains and the grain boundaries are formed. The first figure shows the stage of nucleation, where the atoms are clustering together to form the grains and to form a particular crystal structure of a given material. The second figure shows the stage of grain growth, where the atoms have clustered together to form the different grains, and these grains are growing in size. Now, these different grains have the same crystal structure but have the different crystal orientations. Due to the difference in crystal orientations, these grains can be distinguished from one another under a microscope. In the third figure, we can clearly see the different grains having the same crystal structure but having different crystal orientations. Now, in between the grains are the areas of grain boundaries. This figure shows only the grain boundaries. Now, since the crystal orientations are different for different grains, so over the grain boundaries, the atomic arrangement is haphazard, that is, atoms are not arranged in orderly fashion. So this is why the grain boundaries are the areas of crystal imperfections. And since the grain boundaries are visible over a material surface, so they are the examples of surface defects. Now let us come to the few more important facts regarding the grain boundaries. Let us first consider this figure, which shows a particular grain. We know about that an edge dislocation is nothing but an extra half plane of atoms. Now, although the entire grain has the same crystal structure, but when the edge dislocations or extra half plane of atoms are present within the grains, there can be slight misalignment of crystal orientations from one part of the grain to the another. Now this misalignment in crystal orientation is denoted by angle theta. This gives rise to small angle grain boundaries which divide the grain into two subgrains. Here in the second figure we can see the same phenomena. Here we can see a particular grain having a definite crystal structure. Here this is a different grain of the same crystal structure but having a different crystal orientation. So here we get the angle of misalignment between these two grains. Here we get the high angle grain boundary between these two grains, and here we can see the small angle grain boundary which divides this particular grain into two subgrains. Here we see few types of grain boundaries. Now grain boundaries may consist of edge or the screw dislocations. Tilt boundaries are the grain boundaries consisting entirely of edge dislocations. Then twist boundaries are the grain boundaries consisting entirely of screw dislocations. Another type of grain boundary is the twin boundary, which is shown in this figure. Now the twin boundary is a grain boundary where the crystal structure on one side is exactly the mirror image of the other side. So these are the few examples of the types of grain boundaries.